Welcome to a Chef Knives to Go quick look product review. This is Steve Gamache, and what we're looking at in this episode is the Fugen Kudauchi Shitogami or White number 1 Petty 150mm knife. So this line of knives has a core steel, as kind of mentioned, of Shitogami or what's known as white paper number 1, reactive high carbon steel from Hitachi. They shoot for a heat treat around 61 Rockwell. They do it by eye and feel, so it's not a scientific, endeavor, since these are just kind of hand hammered fully hand-forged blades, but so not super hard, so kind of a medium heat treat on these. Should sharpen up well and hold a reasonable edge. Almost nothing sharpens as well as Shitogami number 1, especially at a lower heat treat level, and so these will just make you feel like a champ on the sharpening stones. So the construction of these is on either side of that harder core steel, they have a softer reactive iron cladding for a 3-layer sandwich, and that cladding has a Kudauchi or blacksmith finish on it. I found the finish to be not the most durable in the world. You can see it's starting to kind of come off in the tip area here on this particular sample. So I would expect it not to be, I would expect it to kind of start to wear off, somewhat quickly depending on what you cut, how you cut, stuff. It's going to vary from person to person, but don't be alarmed if that happens. It'll just start to kind of increase the character of the knife. The weight and dimensions on these will vary a little bit from knife to knife. Since they're hand hammered, but this one's about 70 grams, 2.5 ounces, so very light. The edge length is right about 150 millimeters by 5.9 inches, just under 6 inches, and overall length about 11.1 inches. The spine thickness coming out of the handle above the back of the heel is about 3 millimeters, and I measured it about halfway down the blade. It's about 2 millimeters. And it doesn't lose a whole lot off of that. It thins up just a touch. And then this has a little bit more of a pointy tip, so you've got a little bit longer grind there. So it gets real skinny at the very tip. So these are good performing knives. They're also pretty thin at the edge. They don't have a high grind on them, but they're thin at the edge. They've got a little bit of concave to the blade flats. So you'll get a pretty good food release off these as well. That helps your food release. Blade height is about 33.6, so it's a fairly tall, kind of a mini Gyuto style petty versus a more utility style knife. These knives are, I think they're high value for their price point, and to hit that price point, they kind of bang them out pretty quick, and they also put a basic handle on them. So the handle's oval, which is kind of nice. There's no D handles here, and it's a hoe wood plastic or resin ferrule with a little bit of a step between the wood and the ferrule. That's kind of a collar that goes over there. And that's pretty standard for this style of knife, or this style of handle. There tends to be gaps in the install where the slot is for the tang, so you want to seal that up with something. I like to either use 2-part epoxy, or you can use beeswax or something like that. Circumference is about 66 millimeters or 2.6 on this, so it's an appropriate size for this style of knife. Let's look at the blade close up. So you've got the core steel showing there. You've got a frosted blade road, and you've got a little bit of a texture. It's actually pretty smooth, the finish, the Kudauchi, but they're kind of cool. As you run your finger along, you can feel the hammer marks and undulations in the hammering. So they've got a lot of character to them. And again, they're good performers. This one, as I mentioned on the other videos for these knives, they bang them up pretty quick to meet a price point. So Chef Knives to Go is looking at every one of these out of the box, and they're going to eyeball them and see if they need anything, if they need a little straightening maybe, or if the edge profile has any kind of irregularities. They may finish sharpen it to clean it up. So you might get one of these finish sharpened. Out of the box, you'll see a little Chef Knives to Go finish sharpening card, which tells you the progression they made and who sharpened it. This particular one was finish sharpened out of the box, and it is a great edge. I'd give this at least a 7, if not a full-on 8. It's got a great pointy tip. It's consistent bevel size. It's taken to a high polish, but it's got tooth to it. So it's a really nice edge out of the box. So you may find you get one that's screaming sharp. If not, they've been about an average like 5 out of 10. Nothing super fancy, but they're easy to sharpen. So you got some I shouldn't say hand chisels. You got some embossed kanji on the left side of the blade. They've relieved the spine just a little, the choil just a little bit back here, so they're comfortable out of the box. And again, I'm pretty impressed for the price point they hit. They're good performing knives, and especially if you got Chef Knives to Go looking over for any irregularities, That's a good feature. So they've got a lot of character to them. Let's look at the cutting board demo. Oh, before I do that, I guess we'll talk about balance point. Balance point right there in front of just in front of the back of the blade. So a little bit behind a pinch on this, but not a big deal with this kind of knife. So here's your profile. Just kind of, it's got a fairly low kind of spear point tip to it. So I'm going to dig the tip in pretty quick on there. Part of that is Elton, the sharpener, the way he finishes his tips off, he likes a nice sharp point on there. So you can tweak that if you want the last millimeter or two and bring it up a little bit, which some knife makers do. Some producers do, but so I'm not going to get too high without digging that tip in there, but man, is that tip great for detail work. So it's kind of a compromise. So kind of a gentle belly, nothing too outrageous, which should work for a lot of techniques. If you do board work, you can see you've got a little bit of a room there for board work, or you can always pull it off the edge of the board if you need a lot of clearance. So just pretty neat little knife, actually, and it does a nice job. So if you're looking for something to maybe learn to sharpen on, or just a utility kind of style knife, you want to try out a Kuta-Uchi blade, full reactive blade, see what it's all about, and not spend a ton of money. These are a really nice line of knives. So this is the Fugen Kuta-Uchi Shitogami or white number 1 Petty 150 millimeter knife.